Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the
We Got It podcast,
which is an official podcast of Spartans Illustrated, which is your hub and home for all things Spartan athletics. Michigan State basketball has had 2 decisive victories after a little stretch off. It's so fun having basketball back. And Spartans Illustrated has you covered on so much good recap of the games, articles, catching up with coaches and players. They had a really fun 5 minutes in the locker room with Coen CARR after his career game yesterday. So definitely check them out. Our goal as the We Got It podcast is really to be kind of like your one-stop shop when it comes to Spartan athletics, especially football and basketball. I know I get really overwhelmed sometimes, feeling like I have to read all the articles or watch every minute of the game to feel like I'm a good enough fan. And we're just here to tell you that that's not the case. You are a fan because you love Spartan athletics, and that's all that matters. And if you're wanting to know a little bit more, we hope that these 30 to 45 minutes a week is all that you need to feel like you can jump into those conversations with your friends over the holidays, your coworkers, your family. So we appreciate you being here, and we hope that we continue to kind of be your home for Spartan athletics.
Yeah, and remember to continue to support us every time you follow, subscribe to any of our pages or our podcast. It helps get the word out to more Spartan fans, help them get it covered as well.
I don't think people realize how much leaving a review or even subscribing or signing up for automatic downloads really helps the algorithm boost our podcast and reach more and more Spartan fans who might feel like they're feeling kind of left out because they don't always know what's going on. So you can be a part of the Spartan community in that way, and we would really, really appreciate it. Welcome to the We Got It podcast,
a Michigan State sports podcast for everyone.
We're Jonah and Abby, a husband and wife who's probably a little too obsessed with Spartan sports.
And we want to share a little bit of that obsession with you, from casual fans
to die-hard bleed green fanatics.
And we want to make following Spartan sports easy, enjoyable, and engaging for everyone.
Go green!
We got 2 basketball games this week to catch up on. It was nice after about a 10-11 day stretch without Spartan basketball to get 2 games in
Absolutely.
1 week. Had the game down in Detroit at Little Caesars Arena against Oakland, and then back at home this past Saturday against Florida Atlantic.
I love having the games at Little Caesars Arena, especially when it's with a team from the east side of the state, even though it's a little bit more home court advantage for them. We went to a game several years back, I believe, that we played Detroit Mercy there. And it's just such a fun atmosphere being at Little Caesars. It's so fun seeing the big Pistons logo. Makes you really feel like it's the big stage. It's constantly shocking to me how different the college 3-point line is compared to the NBA 3-point line. And I think that's always kind of fun to see with those games as well. What stuck out to you from the game against Oakland? We'll kind of go in order of how they happened.
Yeah. So I think the Oakland game was definitely a little bit more of a sloppy start for the Spartans.
Yes.
Oakland plays a pretty unique high pressure zone.
Yeah.
And I thought it could take Michigan State a little bit to kind of get accustomed to that. It's a hard defense to prepare against. You don't see it very often, so you're not preparing for that on a consistent basis. So I think another example of Izzo kind of just testing his team,
yes,
getting them ready for whatever looks at teams. Will be giving them a look when it comes to March, when it comes to the Big Ten play. So obviously a sloppy start, but kind of brought it all together in the second half for a pretty decisive victory.
And I think it's key that we see some legitimate zone defense before you get to March. I think that's a key point. I have so much PTSD from 2019 with Syracuse and the zone. And so every opportunity that we can get these guys exposed to that, even if it's an opponent who doesn't have the same level of intensity as somebody who's going to be in the NCAA tournament, it really does, I think, put us off on a back foot every single time we face a zone. And it is a little bit concerning to me. So I hope that it's hard. You're not going to see a lot of that in Big Ten play, unfortunately. But I do hope that we maybe have some opponents where we can continue to face a little bit of the zone. I don't know as we head in against Western after Christmas if they'll run any kind of zone, but as much experience as we can get those guys with that, I would prefer.
Right. What stood out to you against Oakland?
Xavier Booker. I mean, it's hard not to. I tend to go towards like specific players, but I mean, he had a career high. He had 18 points. Just really an outstanding performance from him. And I just love seeing him continue to have success game after game. And I think that's just building that trust in himself, the trust from his other teammates too, of like, hey, we know that Booker can step up and make big plays and can make a difference in the stat line, but also the score in some of these games.
Absolutely. And I think when he's aggressive, when he's confident, when he isn't just on the outside shooting threes, he gives this team just so much more to work with. He's that, 7-foot guy who can stretch the court with his outside shot. He can go inside. He's a threat for lobs, putbacks, offensive rebounds. And when he's aggressive and assertive, he's a totally different animal out there.
And I think I keep going back to this theme of how much more dynamic this team is compared to previous years, with players like Xavier Booker, with players like Coen CARR. Like you said, it helps raise the ceiling of how far this team can go because it does stretch defenses. It challenges defenses. We don't have these one-dimensional players of Carson Cooper, Jackson Kohler, Mady Sissoko. I mean, they really were, especially Jackson Kohler with his injury. He is now becoming a player too that's also stretching the defense, which is really exciting to see. And he's had a couple big games this week as well.
Right. And I think this team, we kind of had some concerns going into who is going to be that guy who can kind of get a bucket when you need to, kind of be that leading scorer, that alpha. And I think Jaden Akins is kind of that guy. But really with this team, you don't really need somebody like a Tyson Walker of previous years or even like a Cassius Winston where they have to kind of put the team on their back, go for 24, 25 points in order to give this team a win. It's really like you kind of have one guy who will have 15 to 18 points, and then you'll have a slew of guys behind him, all in double figures, guys on the bench contributing. And it really, I think it makes it hard for teams to prepare for because you can't just key in on one guy because there's so many guys depending on the matchup, depending on how they're playing, how they're feeling, that can kind of be that guy any given night.
Absolutely. And we saw that through and through this week with the matchups against Oakland and FAU. I do agree that I think Jaden Akins is stepping up as maybe one of the most consistent performers, but it's not like he has to have a career game every game in order for us to succeed. Against Oakland on Tuesday and then FAU on Saturday, Jaden Akins was one of the top scorers. Both games he was in double digits. But then we had people then supporting alongside Jaden Akins. So against Oakland, we saw Booker step up in a big way with 18 points. I believe Jackson Kohler also put up 14 points in that game. So we had 3 players in double digits, one of which was Jaden Akins. But then we had another additional 8 players who all put up points in that game. And so that depth is just incredible. And like I said, it causes the defense and the other team to feel threatened by every single player that is on the court. And then the same thing against FAU on Saturday. We had 4 players in double digits. Again, Jaden Akins, and then Coen CARR with a career game. Jace Richardson had double-digit points.
And Jeremy Fears as well.
Jeremy Fears, thank you. I knew my brain was blinking. But then again, another 7 players also scoring. So in both of those games, you have 11 players putting up meaningful points on the board. And we're looking like a nasty team to have to face, and I'm loving it. It's so
absolutely
good.
And I think last year, in the last maybe 2 years, when Tyson Walker was kind of the guy, if he kind of got off to a rough start, it wasn't having his night, it was kind of like, oh boy, like we're going to have a hard
You have to dig yourself out of a hole.
Scoring. Yeah. And I think if Jaden Akins gets off to a slow start, or Richardson or Booker, or any of these other guys get off to a slow start, I don't think there's that sense of panic. Yeah, exactly. Because okay, somebody's probably going to step up. And I think the one thing I will say is we haven't had too many games where maybe we're behind by 6 or 7 points. The offense is kind of struggling. And that's going to happen in Big Ten play, especially on the road. So I'm interested to see who that guy can be for Michigan State. I do kind of think it can be by committee. I think in some nights it's going to be Akins, and some nights it's going to be Richardson. And I think guys like Holloman and Fears, even a guy like Kohler, depending on the matchup, can kind of be that guy you can just give him the ball and get a bucket when you need to.
And I hate to admit it, Frankie, Fiddler too. And actually I misspoke. It wasn't Jace Richardson that was in double digits. He's had a really good game against FAU, but it was actually Frankie that scored in double digits. And he's quickly becoming someone, I think he does really well coming off the bench. Just
Absolutely.
like we talked about, he comes in with a lot more fire and intensity. And we've seen him scoring from all three levels really when he's been coming off
Right.
the
And
bench.
that's been a great adjustment by Izzo. I know he started the year in the starting rotation, but kind of now coming off the bench, it's been a great change.
And he's often like the third or fourth guy off the bench, like the eighth or ninth man on the court a lot of times.
And I think eventually they are going to have to kind of shrink that lineup a little bit to kind of make sure your best players are always on the court. But I think as we have game against Western and then 18 Big Ten games, like being able to continue to keep rotations and lineups fresh and not making guys play 30 minutes a game is going to be huge down this stretch to kind of continue to stack wins. Obviously, Michigan State's tied for first with UCLA and Michigan in the Big Ten standings, but in order to kind of keep and hold that lead, they're going to have to continue to keep wins coming. And one way you do that is by keeping your guys fresh, not letting them get super tired, bogged down because they're playing 30, 35 minutes game in, game out.
Absolutely. That's wild to think that we're staring down 18 Big Ten games after Christmas.
Right.
And that's more than usual, correct? Because of the expansion, or would we typically be saving a lot of those Big Ten games for after the holiday break?
Yeah, usually the last 3 or 4 years, they've kind of switched to having those 2 early Big Ten games because they've increased the conference schedule to 20 games.
Okay.
And then kind of over Christmas break, you have a couple non-conference games, have some more time in between games. But then after the new year, you kind of end this season with 18 conference games.
So it's the same number of conference games, but it's a decrease in the number of unique opponents because now the Big Ten is sitting at 18 teams. So with 20 conference games, you're only playing 2 teams twice.
Yeah. So it's and that's, I think in some ways favorable. I think obviously sometimes it can be unfortunate because maybe you only play one team on the road, but if there's a bad matchup that you have, a team you don't really line up well against, you only have to face them once in the regular season. And I think it's going to make the Big Ten tournament pretty exciting because for a lot of these matchups, it's going to be only the second time these teams have played. So it's not like it's their third time playing each other. I feel like sometimes too, how the schedule is worked out is you might play Wisconsin twice in February and then you get matched up against them in the Big Ten. And that's just, it's hard to prepare for the same team over and over again.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm excited for this stretch. I think this is Michigan State's best start in about 4 years. They have a decently favorable, it's hard to say that any stretch is really favorable in the Big Ten, but a decently favorable stretch to kind of start Big Ten play to hopefully continue to kind of stack some wins. But yeah, it's going to be a fun Big Ten team. There seems to be a lot of teams who are in it. Doesn't seem to be that one maybe elite team, but probably 5, 6, 7, 8 pretty solid teams that I think all could probably vie for a championship.
And that's what I love about the Big Ten. The competition is just so fierce. And I think for all the people that want to hate on the Big Ten, that's why there's so many Big Ten teams in the NCAA tournament year after year.
Absolutely.
We got to talk about a player of the week.
Yeah.
I have an idea. We haven't talked about this.
Yeah, I haven't heard
my player of the week is.
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
I think that's tough because in the Oakland game, Coen CARR honestly had a pretty quiet game when Xavier Booker went off.
Yes.
In the Florida Atlantic game, Booker was pretty quiet. Izzo kind of mentioned that he kind of struggled a little bit. And
I love to see that he was still taking threes, though.
Yeah, I think that confidence didn't seem to waver. Just his shots didn't seem to be falling as much. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's hard. I'm curious to hear what you have for player of the week.
I want Coen CARR to be my player of the week just because of how much fun it was in the Breslin Center on Saturday. Like, that place was rocking when he hit that three. And there was just that perfect moment, like Will Tiemann said, of that anticipation of like, I legitimately felt like the ball slowed down when it was in the air. And I don't think many people got to their feet throughout the game. But when that swished through the net, I mean, that place jumped up. There's no Izzone this week because it's Christmas break, but I mean, that place was going nutso. And I couldn't help. I always wait for, those big moments. A lot of times Spartans socials will reshare the clips, but with the Spartan Media Network voiceover. And we were talking during the game of like, I can't wait for the Will team, and he got it for Coen Carr's first 3. And my favorite thing was they did put that moment out, but not only was there a Will team and he got it, but there was a Matt Stiganga, he got it. And I was like, that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, Matt Stiganga was losing his mind to kind of, in a good way, like step on Will's toes and use that line.
I mean, it was hard not to. It was such a, like, it was kind of a broken play. Carr just got in that big block on the defensive side, and then kind of got the ball was kind of moving all over the place on offense, and they kicked it out the last minute to Carr. And it did seem like that shot was in the air for about 10 minutes.
And what I loved about that setup, though, was, again, what we've talked about. Jaden Akins passed up on a good shot to give Carr a great shot. The ball movement on that play was phenomenal. I think there were 4 or 5 passes to get it around the horn from, I think, Carr to Akins. And Akins could have taken a contested 3, but instead he quick flipped it back to Coen Carr, who is wide open, who is not a 3-point shooter, but said, hey, I believe in this guy. I believe in the Kenny Goins that he can hit this shot. And so I just loved that. Also, Coen Carr with an absolutely nasty cockback one-hand dunk flying down the court. I mean, it was disgusting. I think Fox Sports called it the dunk of the year. Like, it was everywhere on my social media.
I mean, I feel like that whole game was really just a Coen Carr highlight reel. Like, he had, I think, like 4 or 5 dunks. He had the 3. He had a block. He had a steal. Like, he was all over the court on both sides of the ball. And yeah, in a game that was never really that stressful. I mean, there was obviously, again, kind of like the Oakland game. It was sloppy at times, but never really in doubt. It was nice, especially like you said, maybe a little less energy without the zone. Coen Carr made sure that the energy was brought by the fans because he was just bringing highlight after highlight play.
Absolutely. Now, because of exactly what you said, like, I think you could make an argument that CARR or Booker could be the player of the week. But for me personally, I'm going to go a different direction. And past Abby would probably be like, what the heck are you talking about? But I am going to nominate Jackson Kohler as player of the week this week. That kid just had 2 really solid games. Against Oakland, he put up 14 points. He had, I believe,
10 rebounds,
which is a nice little double-double for him. And then against FAU, he had 6 points and 12 rebounds. I mean, that kid has been going after it. And I think just seeing the amount of tenacity and ability to push through and make things happen, I just have a lot of respect for him. And he's someone who has really obviously surprised me. I'm going to volunteer him.
I like that. I mean, he's a guy. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the tallest guy. He's not the most athletic guy.
He doesn't have the best haircut.
But he continues to be an animal on the glass and just bring down pretty much on both sides of the ball the rebounds. And he's just all effort all the time. He's on the floor all the time. And even Saturday against Florida Atlantic, when maybe he doesn't have a ton of points, his impact is still felt because of those effort plays and with the rebounds. And he doesn't have a lot of highlight plays. Like I said, he's not the most athletic guy, not the flashiest guy, but like he's quietly kind of playing himself into one of the better big men in the Big Ten, and one of the guys you can kind of rely on. And like, he's been good from the free throw line. He's been able to kind of improve on his 3-point shot. He's been a lot more dynamic this year. And I think, he's not going to get a lot of attention nationally or even within the Big Ten. But if you're watching him game in and game out, like a lot of us are, he is just playing at such a high level right now and is giving this team that energy, that vintage Tom Izzo, just get after the ball, defend, rebound, run. I've been impressed with how he defends the post. Again, like, he's not maybe getting a lot of blocks, but he's contesting a lot of shots. Like, his impact goes so far beyond just his box score, and he's been rebounding at an elite level.
Absolutely. His ceiling, I think, is definitely lower than this player, but just the amount of like diligence and grit that he shows on the court honestly reminds me of Xavier Tillman. Like, Xavier Tillman was just someone who was always working 150% out on the court. And I've been seeing that from Jackson this year.
Yeah, I think another maybe comparison I would do is even like a guy like Matt Costello.
That's true. That's maybe a bit more fair.
I think Matt Costello
I've got that recency
was
bias.
probably a little bit more athletic than Kohler, but I think Kohler has a little better offensive.
I feel bad we're hitting him with all these backhanded compliments.
Package where I think you can get it down into the post and he can make that move. So I think but you never have to doubt his energy and effort. And that was something with Matt Costello is you never questioned whether or not he would bring it every single game. Yes. That's what Jackson's doing.
Absolutely. I also want to give an honorable mention to Simone Zapala. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's just been quietly consistent. I think against Oakland, he had 6 blocks, 5 points, close to something around 8 rebounds, and then similar performance, not as many blocks against FAU, but again, rebounding the ball well, putting up those 5, 6, 7 points, and just being a consistent player in there, which I think is so underrated for us.
Right. And I think, he's been definitely a better addition than pretty much probably anybody outside of maybe Tom Izzo and his coaching staff thought he would be. And I think people even kind of going into the year is this guy really going to be an upgrade over a guy like Matty Sissoko?
I think we can confidently say yes at this point.
I mean, again, nothing against Matty Sissoko. Wish all the success in the world to him. But just the consistency that Zapala brings, he doesn't really he doesn't seem to ever be a liability. He's just there, solid, gets the rebounds that come to him, defends well.
Yeah, a nice little slam on Saturday.
Yeah, he had some aggressiveness and assertiveness on Saturday with some dunks and one that we maybe haven't seen a lot from him. So I think as he continues to gain confidence, it's going to continue to help
I
the
think
team.
He'll continue to raise his ceiling even this season.
Yeah.
Definitely. Not to end on a negative note, but I do think that I need to walk something back a little bit. I get a little bit excited about Spartan basketball, if you can't tell. And a few episodes ago, we were showering a lot of compliments on Carson Cooper. And I think, I got a little excited and was like, we're seeing the same improvement out of Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper. To be fair, I hadn't seen as many or really any what the heck are you doing, Carson Cooper moments. But I had a listener and friend, shout out to Mr. T, lovingly say Carson Cooper still needs to prove himself a lot. And I will say against FAU, I had several what the heck Carson Cooper moments. So the fact that we got through about 10 games of not having really any of those moments, he did kind of put himself back in the hole.
Yeah, and so
if you're listening, Carson, stop doing the what the heck moments, and please stop trying to put the ball on the floor when you're underneath the basket. Just keep it up here. You're tall.
Yeah,
you can do it.
He's a guy I think as the season kind of goes along and they maybe needing to shrink the lineups a little bit, his minutes are probably some guy you look to kind of reduce a little bit. But I think, again, to keep those legs fresh, you're going to need him and to have that depth when guys are in foul trouble. So not totally off the Carson Cooper train, but I think it's going to be a little bit more strategic on how and when we use him.
There's a reason why Jackson Kohler was the player of the week this week, and Carson Cooper is not in that conversation at all.
Right. Well, we got one more basketball game in 2024 against Western Michigan on December 30th. And we got a kind of cool podcast, I think, coming for you guys next week. So you guys will definitely going to want to tune in for that in regards to specifically that game on the 30th.
So that episode might be dropping a little bit later, but I promise that there's a fun reason why.
Right. But yeah, then we got Big Ten play, so a lot to look forward to this season, and we will, as always, be there with you along the way.
Helping you feel like we got it. It's time now for the We Got It halftime update. So turning it over to our analyst, Jonah Wilson, to get us caught up on what's going on in Spartan sports. It's been an off week for hockey, so really it's just been the women's basketball team this week.
Yeah, so the women's team traveled down to Palm Beach for a little bit of a multi-team event down there. Started off on Thursday with a game against Montana, and the Spartan women dominated that game through and through with a 69-38 victory to improve on 11-0 on the season, continuing their best stretch or best start in program history. However, going into Friday, they played also an 11-1 opponent, Alabama, and Yeah, that was a tough game for the Spartans. It's close throughout the first half. They played really well in the fourth quarter, but really just had a really, really rough third quarter against Alabama. Was outscored by, I think, roughly 20 points in that quarter.
That's hard to recover
kind of,
from.
yeah, dug themselves in a hole where even after that solid fourth quarter, weren't able to come back, ended up falling 82-67 for their first loss of the year, now to fall to 11-1. But Spartan women are still in great position, 1-0 in the Big Ten, still their best start in program history, still ranked in the top 25, so a lot to continue to root for them as they too now in the new year will be starting their stretch of Big Ten play.
Amazing. We'll get you back to the main event. To close out this week's episode, we want to focus our We Got It Covered segment on the updates from the transfer portal. For any new listeners, our We Got It Covered segment is really designed to help take Spartan fans through like some confusing or maybe more nuanced aspect of football, basketball, or any other sport that we're covering that maybe is just like a little tricky and feels like a barrier to you having those conversations or feeling like you know what's going on when it comes to Spartan athletics. And one of those big areas that's been a point for me in the past is just understanding the transfer portal and when it opens and when it closes and who can transfer and what are the rules. And it says, hey, so-and-so entered, but then they didn't actually end up leaving. And so if you have questions related to the transfer portal, I'd love for you to go back and check out our most previous episode 19, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Where we talk all things transfer portal. So if you want a little bit more of a deep dive, feel free to listen to that episode. I think there's a lot of great information packed into it. This week, we just want to get you caught up. There's been a lot of activity as the football transfer portal is open this week and for about another few days. And we've had some kind of significant number of transfers in. So get us caught up on where things are at there.
Right. Where last week we kind of updated you on 2 incoming transfers to Michigan State. We kind of hinted that this past week would probably be pretty busy where things started to pick up quite a bit. And that was definitely the case for Michigan State. I believe they picked up 6 additional transfers this week. And we're not going to touch on every single one of them, but I wanted to kind of just highlight some of the, I think, more significant ones for the Spartans. Starting off with transfer running back Elijah Tolliver, who is a running back from Sacramento State. Guy that's had a lot of production at Sacramento State. He played in 41 career games, has almost 300 career carries, 1,600 career yards, 14 touchdowns. He's also catches the ball quite a lot. He has almost 50 career catches for almost 400 yards, a couple touchdowns. So a pretty dynamic player from Sacramento State. I think on the outside, you look Sacramento State, like, who is this guy?
I know I started to get excited. Then I was like, well, what does that even mean coming from a team like that in that kind of conference?
Right. And I think when it comes to the transfer portal, you kind of have these 2 kind of groups of players. You have highly productive players that are coming from smaller schools, kind of looking to kind of step up their competition and playing level. And then you have the guys from like the power conferences who are kind of maybe buried in the depth chart, don't have a ton of playing time and looking for some place where they can.
Those underclassmen.
Right.
Is that what you mean when you say buried in the depth chart?
Yeah. And I think from a fan perspective, you can see, this guy's transferring from Oregon or Alabama or whatnot. And a lot of those players ended up being solid, but some of those players, there's a reason they're leaving their team, and it's because they weren't really playing at that level. And
didn't think that they would be able to play at that level in the upcoming year.
So I think landing guys like this who have a lot of production actually are probably going to be the more impact players out of the transfer portal. Like when you think about it, what kind of competition was this guy playing against last year? Well, think about somebody like Nick Marsh. He was playing against high schoolers. Last year and came in as one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten.
That's a really helpful comparison, actually, because we don't scrutinize true freshmen who, have produced well in high school the same way that I think we scrutinize some of these, non-FBS players coming in.
Right. But yeah, I'm really excited about Elijah, I think he's going to be a solid addition to this team. Most likely going to be the starting back for Michigan State with losing Nate Carter and K'Ron Lynch. Adams, if you're kind of familiar with the maybe broader college football scene, Arizona State, who was one of the top 4 seeds in the college football playoff, their running back, who received some Heisman votes, was a transfer last year from Sacramento State. So don't get stuck on Sacramento State because even last year, there was a running back who transferred from the same school who had a huge impact on a team that won the Big 12, has a bye in the college football playoff, and it was one of the best, not only running backs in this conference, but one of the best running backs in the whole entire country. So be excited about him. Moving down, Michigan State picked up another commit from a wide receiver, Krishan Big Play McCray.
Nuh-uh, that's what they call him?
That's what they call him. He is a wide receiver from Kent State.
Okay.
He's played in 21 career games, 81 career catches, 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns. This past year, he had 700 yards and 9 touchdowns. And I think, again, Kent State, big whoop, like, who is this guy? But the MAC has produced a lot of high-quality wide receivers. Even think at Michigan State, Jaden Reed started his career at Western Michigan. You think of guys who have had a lot of success.
Wow, I forgot about that.
In the NFL, like Antonio Brown.
Well, and Reed is having success in the NFL.
So absolutely. I think if you look at Michigan State losing Isaiah Johnson, Jerron Glover, not great like losses that you want to see. But if you look and again, they don't mean a whole lot, but if you look at the transfer portal positional rankings, 2 guys they lost and the 2 guys they are bringing in, Omari Kelly and Krishan McCray, are both more highly rated than the 2 guys we lost. So I think on paper, Michigan State definitely improved their wide receiver position and is going to be giving Aiden Childs a lot more weapons, some guys that better fit the system, some speed guys that they didn't necessarily have last year.
How can you not when your name's Big Play McCray?
Exactly.
I love that.
He also returned the ball, so maybe you'll see him on special teams. Okay. So I'm really excited about both those guys.
Absolutely.
Michigan State landed another offensive line.
I was just going to ask.
Yes.
Please tell me we got more offensive linemen.
From Western Carolina, Caleb Carter. He's played in 34 games. Again, 15 career starts. Landed a defensive tackle from Florida State, Grady
also needed.
Kelly, who I think last year he was in the transfer portal as well, one of the more sought after defensive tackles, another position of need. Got a couple defensive backs, Nahai Burt and Joshua Eaton. So guys that, who knows, maybe they'll start, maybe they're not. But again, Michigan State needs to fill out this roster with
We need depth.
And I think they're continuing to get guys that are probably guys they're hoping to be plug and play starting immediately. I think obviously our running back and our 2 receivers we got will definitely be starters. Some of these other guys will definitely just be improving that depth. But that's what Michigan State needs. I mean, towards the end of the year when we had so many injuries, especially in the secondary, like we just need bodies.
Absolutely.
And again, a lot of these guys are coming from smaller schools. Don't let that deter you. I think we can trust this staff and their evaluation of guys that can come in who have played significant amount of snaps and games and starts for their respective schools and are now joining the Spartans. But overall, I think I would give this a passing grade of a transfer class. Yeah. Obviously, we've only brought in 8. I would expect
a couple more, maybe.
I would probably expect another 5 to 6 to 7 more this portal cycle. And then I think we'll get some more additions in the spring. But overall, I would say a good start for Michigan State. I would love them to maybe get us starting a offensive lineman, a guy maybe on the edge on the defensive line that can rush the quarterback. But Michigan State's continuing. I know they had some visits this past weekend. They had some guys over the last couple weeks visit, and they'll continue to working on some of those guys. Some of these guys, too, who were kind of been under the radar, so we didn't really have any idea they were visiting. So we don't really know what all is happening behind the scenes. But
absolutely,
you do know that the staff is working very, very hard to secure these commits.
Yes. I think previously, before getting more into understanding recruiting, I kind of just thought these coaches are so relieved. On the one hand, it sucks they didn't make a bowl game, but these coaches now they get to relax and enjoy the holidays with their families. No. This is, I think, probably the hardest busiest time of year for them in some ways. And not just for him. I have to give a shout out to Tom Izzo after the FAU game. Somebody spotted him out and about at was it an actual
high school basketball game,
just sitting in the bleachers in his puffer coat watching basketball. And I have to really commend, like, I think it's so easy to send a lot of negative messages out towards coaching staff when we don't see them getting recruits that we think they should be getting. But, you know, seeing what these coaches are doing on a day-to-day basis, and yes, they are getting paid big bucks for it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be doing their job, but I think they might be doing a little bit more than people even realize.
No, totally. They're definitely never sleeping. And just because there's no games or practices, they are working just as hard, if not harder, to secure as many guys as they can that are going to come in next year and improve this team.
Absolutely. And I think there's part of me that's like, wow, that was just rapid fire, so many names, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember all that stuff. But you don't have to. Like, I'm just going to give you that pass that you don't have to remember all these things. But our hope is that next August, when we're doing our football season preview again, we're going to bring up Omar Kelly, and we're going to bring up Big Play McCray, and you're going to be like, oh, hey, we got those guys in the transfer portal last year. Like, just starting to plant some of those seeds and, see how they develop. I think the spring game is going to be interesting. That's going to be the first time we'll really see some of those transfer players. And so it's just helpful, I think, to keep an eye out on what's going in the transfer portal this winter.
If you forget some of those names, that's great. If you're a sicko like me and want to read more about these games, head over to Spartans Illustrated. They have articles on each and every one of these commits, on their background, their stats, what we hope to they are bringing to the team next year. So if you're looking for more, there's definitely more available to you over at Spartans Illustrated.
And we both work full-time jobs and aren't always the best at getting timely updates, but Spartans Illustrated absolutely has you covered there. I mean, they are on it. As soon as a new commit is out, I mean, it's a couple minutes and they've got an article up about them and give you kind of everything you need to know. Again, if you want to be a sicko and a little bit too involved.
Absolutely.
But if you don't want to be, know that we'll get you caught up on our weekly episodes.
Well, we are wishing you guys a very Merry Christmas and happy holiday season. We will be back next week. Like I said, you want to tune in for that because I think it will be a cool episode kind of regarding that Western Michigan game at the Breslin Center on the 30th. So you want
some surprises up our sleeve as usual.
As usual. Always keeping you guests in, hopefully giving you guys content that you guys enjoy, want to listen to, want to consume. So
I'm going to give one last plug for these We Got It Covered segments. A lot of these ideas for what we have covered has come in from listeners like you. And so we would love if there is an area that you feel confused about or you'd like more explanation or, hey, we would love for you to take a deep dive into this. Please let us know. You can reach out to us on social media or email us at thewegotitpodcast@gmail.com. And we would love to hear from you. And at some point too, I think it'd be really cool to maybe go through like a mailbag of questions or things like that. So shameless plug to reach out and let us know what you guys want to hear on future episodes.
Absolutely.
For now, go green,
go white,
go state.